Yeah, that'd be nephew. That'd be my wife's,
We'll be on in 1 sec here, Tim. All right. Giving me a hard time.
Yeah, we just had
We should do training at night sometimes. We could all start drinking about an hour ahead of time. He kind of cleaned it up.
Yeah. Oh, that's it.
I'm good with that.
Testing. 1, 2.
Yeah. You get like the third or fourth, He was living in my basement for 6-7 years. Right after he had the surgery.
Testing. 1, 2, 3.
And then he was working at Chicken. He was.
Wow.
Seems like he's come a long way.
He was doing really good with it.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. Bummer. I don't know who was online, if they can hear me or not.
Yeah.
Brandon?
Random fan. I know some fans. Yeah, I know some of the fans. I say why we. Yeah. I know the face.
Well, we're live on the Zoom link at least, and that's recording elsewhere. So, or let me get it recording, and we'll just go. So, Jason, the rest of you guys there, Jake, Tracy, all of you guys, we're just gonna go live on the Zoom part. So, the rest of you might not see it, but we're gonna get ripping here. I apologize, Jake. I can't hear you back right at the moment, so I'm just trying to get things figured out here. All right. That may have restored things. Jake, can you try talking to me now?
Struggle.
Now I can.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Thanks, guys.
Cool. Yeah.
Good to go, Tim. For at least the beginning part.
Okay.
Can you try talking into this?
Into what?
Oh wait. Perfect. I think it's working now. This should pick up your sound just fine.
Do you need that HDMI plugged into you, or do you want to plug back into the Apple TV box?
That happens once every. Should say life.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll make it bigger.
You're live.
All right. Go ahead, Tim.
All right. You want to fire up the PowerPoint?
Yes, sir.
All right, we are ready to go. Welcome. Thanks for coming today. All right, click or next, or I'll point. What to expect today. This is not going to be hardcore technical training. I've learned that no one really retains much or listens much when we get too far into the weeds. So it's going to be a lot of high level stuff. More of a get back together, see each other again, talk to each other. I know that sometimes it just irritates me or bothers me when everybody else is busy and I'm sitting at home twiddling my thumbs and wondering when the next deal is coming, and vice versa. Sometimes the market stinks and I'm busy. It comes and goes every week sometimes. So I think it's good to be able to hear from everybody else. Part of that is, as you're talking to people in your sphere, your friends, anyone, and they ask you about the market, well, you can always tell them what you see of the market, and never discount that. I mean, you're the one in the trenches. You know how it's affecting you, but today I want everybody to hear kind of how it's affecting everybody else as well, so we all have a little more breadth of knowledge, I guess. So we're going to touch on a lot of topics, but we're not going to go too deep on any of them. Some of the slides we're going to skip over pretty quick, or we won't get you out of here until 3. So pizza's at noon. The agenda. Go ahead to the next slide, Dan. So a little bit on, to start, the state of the housing market. What's it like? What are you guys seeing? Just so we're, again, so we can all hear from other people what we're seeing out there.
Is anybody else seeing a big dark spot across?
Yes.
Okay. It's interesting that for so long now we've been writing terrible offers for buyers because it's become more important to get the offer accepted than it is to actually write a good offer. And I suppose a good offer doesn't matter if it doesn't get accepted, but it seems like things are turning a little bit, so at least for some listings, we get to write good offers for buyers again. I'm not seeing that across the board, but more so than a few months ago. We've got some new forms that have come out. I didn't see a lot of fanfare about these. I just pulled down, I think the first one was an addendum O or addendum R, and it looked different. And then I used a farm offer, and I noticed that it came out in 2021. So I just want to really give you a list of some of the new forms that came out. Not to go through them, just so you're aware of it. And Mark's not down here yet, but Mark's going to talk for about, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. So I'm going to talk until about 11, then Mark's going to go and tell you what he does, and then I'm going to jump back in. We'll go till about noon, and then pizza time. Pizza might be here sooner, so you can dive in as soon as the pizza gets here. Clause manager updates, some new clauses have been added. I just want to take a minute or two and run through real quick how that works for those who haven't used it yet. And then a discussion on the coming soon listings, what's allowed, offer presentation. We've all seen that on the listing side and the buyer side, but then it seems like things are shifting a bit now, so I want to kind of throw it out to you guys and see what are your recommendations. And then back to, of course, we're still, as we're talking about writing offers for buyers, we still have to be competitive in a lot of situations, so just a review of that. Okay, next one, Dano. So, mostly what I want to do today is get you guys involved. I kind of mentioned that, but I'm going to throw some questions out and just get some consensus and pull some thoughts out of some of you. And if not, you'll just get all my thoughts. So, all right. Sorry. There it is. That's the right one. Okay, real quick, here's what I see. It seems to be cooling down a bit out there. 2 months ago, 3 months ago, it was bonkers. Now, it's only a little crazy. It feels like it's really slow, but historically, except for the last 6 months, I think it's still more of a seller's market than we've ever seen. So keep all that in mind as we start seeing things slow down. Slowing down isn't a bad thing. We've been on a really bad extreme of the seller's market. That kind of sucks in a lot of ways. Just like 2008 really sucks for a buyer's market. We'd like to be right in the middle somewhere. So we're definitely shifting back towards the middle. That's what I'm seeing. I'm not sure if that's what everybody's seeing or how long that's going to last. But I'm not going to talk about stats. And I mean, we won't really know, I don't think, until the end of the year how things shook out. The stats kind of follow, and then the magazines come out. So WRA website, you can look at Paragon, come up with your own stats if that's what you want. Today, I just hope to give you some talking points as you're talking to your sphere. Well, I guess that's my bottom point. So go ahead and click on the next slide. So the next several slides are just going to be questions. I want some hands raised and see if everybody agrees what we're seeing, and there's no right answers. And then if you think of an idea, if you have something to share, let's share it. And if you don't, you're just going to hear more from me. So next slide. Who thinks you'll be less busy in the next month than you were 2 months ago? Okay. Who thinks you're going to be more busy?
I expect to stay positive.
I did not expect that. I thought 80% would say, no, I'm going to be less busy in the next month. So that's interesting.
So for the people that are watching, that was flipped in your opinion?
Yeah, what?
80-20, 80-20 the wrong direction?
No, it looked like it was,
50-50.
I'd say 40-60 almost. I think more people are raising their hands for thinking they're going to be busier. But let's not forget, we've got back to school time. I mean, it's a normal slowing of the market if for nothing else for school. So how, I mean, who's been as busy as they can remember for the last 6 months? Okay, okay, so it's not bonkers for everybody. Going into the next month, who feels like they have a better pipeline than they did? So this is a lot of positive thought here. Okay, next one. Oh, I didn't touch on this. I don't know that I'm going to get a consensus here. Who thinks the market's cooled a little bit?
Well, just the,
Oh,
just the real tidbit.
Well, and,
Okay.
and can I mention something? So over the weekend, I was at Boston DOC, which is the broker owner conference for the whole country, and there was 400 of us from around the country jamming, talking about the market everywhere. Everybody has experienced what they're, and just so you guys know, most of the people in the other areas that are more bunkers than us, they said it was a vacation lull. They're literally attributing the last 6 to 8 weeks where it felt slower to people taking vacations that haven't in 2 years, and everyone's checking out, everyone's whatever. But the statistical piece that was the most interesting was the percentage of people who signed leases last month. So the data that they were showing us and they were looking at was that there were active home buyers and nearly up to as much as 30% in some of these metros that signed leases because they had been searching for 6 to 8 months and they were done. And so they had taken a year break. So that was actually good news because then basically every market too across the country that they showed data for was going to be building almost twice as many homes next year as they were this year. So that will obviously get things where they were. Well, that's only going to put us back to 2 springs ago, which was still bad. We were still at 40 days average on market. It was still way too much of a seller's market. So we can probably be confident that the market conditions are going to stay the same. Whether or not the financial conditions are going to stay the same is the biggest debate. And then the whole weekend, just so that I can throw it out there for you to use later or not use later, depending on time, we have shifted from a collection of data era in our industries, both for in sales, but in retail and everything else, to now what the hell are you going to do with the data you have because everybody has it. So if you haven't been collecting data on your database, your websites, your mailers, the effectiveness of what you're doing, then you're way behind because we're leaving the era of collecting the data and now saying, all right, you've got all this data, what are you going to do with it? And that scared me a little bit, knowing how many people in this room don't have the data they need to even make those decisions because they're not tracking X, Y, and Z. So tracking is going to be the new buzzword. Social media, kind of all that is not a buzzword anymore at any of these meetings. They're not talking about that, so we're in a new era, and that was eye-opening. Anyway, that was my share from Austin.
Well, that's interesting. I guess that it sounds like there's maybe not shadow inventory like there was back in the buyer's market, but maybe a shadow buyer market of people that couldn't buy a house this year, so they rented. So we've got a big pile of people that are all set to come back next year again. So I think that bodes well for still.
Might spread our spring out too because it postponed. These people are going to still be in leases. They talked a lot about how it was a positive
Next one.
Oh, just so everybody knows, too, in the room, so Tracy, she said she had 2 buyers from the summer sign a lease for another year, and 2 sellers that were going to buy and sell, but decided to wait until next year because they just couldn't find anything, it was too crazy. So that's 4 separate clients of just one of our agents that have all decided to pause it until next year. Thanks for sharing that. That was Tracy Lynch, everybody.
I like this question because I thought about it myself as I'm listing new properties. Who thinks the same house will sell for less 2 weeks from now or in a month than it would have sold for 3 months ago?
I think a percentage of them will.
I think that's fair.
I'm a little.
Prices are still high.
And I think it depends on the price. Well, they're gonna use some comps from a couple months ago, so they'll already start at a higher price, but they just won't get the multiple to shoot it up.
So you're not getting a bidding war for it.
They're
I've
at
had,
that price.
I've had 2 buyers go under contract significantly less than asking price.
Actually, get my bulb in the past month under asking.
Yeah, and that's new. I think we're seeing that because houses aren't selling in the first 3 days. So
Yeah.
when they sit for 2 weeks, then a buyer decides, ooh, now we can, well, and a buyer says, now we can negotiate a little bit. Yeah.
The over asking price has dropped,
Very rough.
so maybe not less in reality, but less in non-reality.
Sellers have raised their list prices accordingly and they're not being jacked up through competition to get to the offer price. Yeah, I think all those comments are real. Certainly depends on the listing, depends on the price range, depends on the area. But if you're getting 20, 30 offers, it seems like the market slowed down and now we're only getting 5 offers instead of 20. Well, you only need 1 and you really only need 2 or 3 to bring out the best offer in people. But yeah, you get 20 offers, it can get crazy. So I'm seeing, I saw a lot of cash offers this year. Is that what you see? I don't know how all of a sudden,
That's a little scary.
that's weird. I don't know, all of a sudden out of the blue, everybody has cash, I guess. I mean, it's certainly the real estate is fueled by the economy. If people don't have jobs, they're not gonna be buying houses.
Doesn't it kind of throw you off that like interest rates are so low? So honestly, I would rather keep my money in my pocket
Well,
and then
but that's
finance
a-
something at 2.35%.
But this is an indicative sign of Wall Street and what we're looking at for the overall market. People are seeing the turn and knows that the market is overvalued and people are putting money into real estate because it bodes way better through tumultuous times in the investing markets. So I think that's where you're seeing people take some of their money instead of continuing to stuff it into Wall Street, and they're pulling it back and throwing it into their house because they know it'll be safe. So
Especially for second home.
second home especially.
So, what's that, Michael?
Good point.
Yeah.
They did talk a little bit about that in Austin, that that'll be the first market that should be the indicator for all of us, would be the second home market. That's the indicator that we have eclipsed over here and we're kind of coming back the other direction. But I mean, we've been on 11-year swings. This might be a 6 or a 7. It could be a 15. Like that part of things we don't know, but we do know we're close to the end of that term. So
Next slide.
got it.
Are we gonna see this again next year or something?
I think it's slightly modified, but yes.
When would,
Well, it's all industry. I think it's all dictated by the industry.
you think so? I think that's a piece of it.
I think it depends on the price range too, but
When would you guys say the craziness started? I mean, I have a month in my head. When would you say the craziness started this year?
November. November 2020.
I was thinking January this year. That's to me when I saw it, but
Well, I remember in December competing and losing. I'm like,
yeah.
homes where I'm like, Why are there so many people?
It seemed oddly busy. It was very busy during a slow time, a historically slow time last year. This last year. So yeah, I'm just curious. With back to school time, what are we going to see? What are we going to see through the holidays? What are we going to see in Q1? So it sounds like more people than not think it's probably going to be a little crazy again next year. I think probably too. I don't know that it'll be as crazy as this year, but there's a lot of room to still be crazy and not be as crazy as it was this year. Prices. Are houses overpriced this year? Are people paying too much?
Yes.
I think
Well,
that's
that's
Okay, well then I go to this question, because then you're probably going to say yes. Do you think prices are going to be higher next year?
Yes.
probably.
Then how can you say they're overpaying this year?
Uh-huh.
Fair question, right?
Well, guys, we should, and maybe the opposite side of this question, how could prices go down?
They might dip in the winter and
So, you know.
What statistical data make it look?
Look at my ring.
They won't.
Where's the demand lessening in Dane County?
Or the supply increasing to
but
the
I see
point
red
that
arrows going down all over my email every day, down to 15,000, down
But they
25,000.
should be in those cases when I.
They should be,
a
yeah.
lot of those people listening in July standing for a price that was so astronomically out of hand.
You can still overprice it even in the
Right?
So, I was having a really hard time with buyers this spring, just talking about value, looking at what things were selling for in the neighborhood and getting my own head around it. And then having a conversation with some other broker, he described it as that price gap between asking and what buyers were paying wasn't an increase of value. It was more what a buyer was offering as an incentive for a seller to pick their offer. And I thought, okay, now that makes sense, because it is kind of arbitrary. It's like, oh, it's the last one, that's what people are gonna pay for.
Right, yeah,
And it's not,
right.
you know, so.
Good point.
In the 300 range, I can see what sold last year for 290. I can see it on the market this year for 3 1/4, and it all makes sense, but.
Yeah. I had one buyer describe it, he called it a buyer tax. He decided not to build because building new is so expensive, you're paying a premium. But if you don't build, you're paying what he called the buyer tax, 5 to 10% seemingly more than what you should be. But I've described it to buyers like this. Buyers have said, is it worth it, or what's it worth? And my answer has been, hell no, it's not worth that. That's a crazy price. However, another buyer, whether you're talking to a buyer or a seller, is it worth it? No. Is a buyer going to pay this? Yes. So I guess that kind of makes it worth it. I mean, there's different ways to ask that value question. What's it going to sell for is really what it is.
And obviously, if you're paying $1,500 rent,
Yeah, I
you're paying
mean,
$1,500 rent,
Yep.
yeah, you're gonna pay them for a whole year, deduct that from the price, you know.
Yeah.
It's an emotional purchase lots of times, so some people would like peace of mind, it's just price,
Yeah.
you know, so it depends.
Who thinks they have the record for number of offers written for a buyer?
Ooh, I want to hear this.
It got pretty darn high.
What do you got?
What do you got?
16?
I was at 14.
I was at,
Anybody
oh,
beat
man.
16?
Wait, hold on, I gotta ask online.
I was at 14.
14.
Truthfully, I don't even know with some buyers.
Justin Wiggins is not here, my family, I get 37 and I hope, oh my God.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I want this.
You mean on a listing one?
No, I'm not talking
No,
about
we're talking how many written for a buyer.
for a buyer.
I would lose 2 a weekend for all spring.
So anybody beat 16?
No.
It's surprise. I've seen buyers.
We got
very
price. That deserves a damn, what family that, we just write, we'll come up with a price. Holden,
Doesn't
I don't know what your price is gonna be, but that
Doesn't
deserves.
help.
You gotta sell back.
Oh, and we signed a lease after that too, so.
Oh, we didn't even get.
Holy shit, you just want a vacation.
R4 maybe.
Yeah, I'll take it to Zach Brown tickets. You get everything.
You guys have free therapy session.
Oh my God.
So my clients finally got one accepted on offer number 13, and that's the first time they said, okay, with an appraisal gap of like 10,000. They got it accepted, and then they killed it because terrible stuff came up in the inspection. So they got it out. And then offer number 14, now that they were comfortable with that appraisal gap buffer, whatever you want to call it, they got their next one accepted too. So it's amazing how, boy, they had to go through 12 offers before they decided, okay, I got to step up that part of the game too. But I think appraisal contingencies in this market are worse than a home sale contingency. I think sellers are somewhat comfortable with home sale contingencies.
So,
Michael?
hold on before we go on, we have to stop the phones. Jake Johnson, who's online, had 20. So write it down to, you guys are gonna need to go to a joint therapy
Might be
session.
documentation on this.
Yeah. But 75 showings, 20 offers.
more than 75.
He had more than 75. Okay, so they're still both, they did both therapy sessions.
You get really good at writing those offers quick, right? You don't need to discuss
Yeah.
anything.
And then Tracy's other question was just, and it was a good one, but was highest list price for anybody in the room, because that's a really good point. We've never seen the new sales, the highest sale record in southern Wisconsin's been set month after month after month, because we've never
I
had
mean,
three.
above ask.
Just total top price, because we've never, in some of these counties, there's never been a $3 million listing. And it's sold. And so there's all sorts of records being hit or whatever. So what was the highest one somebody's ever had in their career this year? Anybody?
Sale.
List price? Or sale price, I guess, yeah.
I had my highest sale.
Highest sale, there you go. There's one.
Highest sale.
2. Yeah. So anyway, that was a good point too.
All right,
Right.
next slide. What do you guys say to you're at the bar or the grocery store or family reunion or wherever people go these days, and they say, how's the market? Are you busy? What's going on?
Are you buying or selling?
Yeah, right. Who's got a message that they say?
I have been telling people when they ask that, especially at the bar, because I tend to go there a lot more lately.
Understand.
Is, the market is tough for some, great for others. I'm lucky to be eating well.
Well said.
Yeah.
I think
really don't want to top routine at that.
I think it's in general, they don't want to hear our horror stories.
Right.
We need to stay positive, but there's a lot of different ways to spin it positive.
Some of us are eating at a different table than others.
Yes, very true.
We can tell each other we got it.
So I'm still pretty much a baby little realtor. Doesn't mean I'm not super dope, like I'm great, don't get me wrong, but I'm still a baby. But I decided I want to keep it cute when people ask me this stuff, because I've also decided that then they really call me for information and then go to other realtors that have gotten salty. So I go, it's wild, right? Why do you ask? You're looking to buy or sell something? And then that usually they're like, done. So I just keep it really cute, and then if they are actually looking to do something, then
They
do
talk.
some business. But I try to not give up too much, because
Yeah, obviously some are potential clients, some are not. They wouldn't use you and they're just making chit chat. So
right. And I don't want to, talk to them about the weather. I guess let's go back to that.
Right,
Like, I don't want to talk about this.
Roars.
Well, if they're buyers, I always tell them, you could probably get under asking now, like theoretically, and if you're selling, like prices are up to an incredible amount. So
It depends is always a great way to start, because that's a feeder for the next one, right? It depends.
That's very
And
true.
it always
It
depends
depends,
anyway.
right. And that's why I keep it cute. And then usually I learn that they really want to tell me what they think about it.
Yeah.
So I just put it back on them, like, why don't you
One of
tell
the-
me how you feel?
One of the buzzwords they told us to try and help everybody when we came back, it's kind of funny this came up on its own. One of the buzzwords they did want us to try to eliminate was crazy. Stop saying the market is crazy, use the word complicated, use the word intricate, use the word whatever, because it makes, number one, crazy is, not really, I guess I didn't understand this coming from Madison, Wisconsin, but it's actually not an okay term too in
Right.
some places, it's just not.
It's no longer PC is what they're saying.
Right.
So complicated, intricate, you know, whatever, don't use the word crazy.
Should we say the market is suffering from mental health?
Yeah.
Everybody is.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Oh, did you want me to switch?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, is anybody here thinking, wow, this year's been really good? But shit, what's gonna happen next year? I'm worried already about next year. Who would raise your hand if you're worried a little bit about next year? Not that you're even worried, I always worry
I was
about
gonna
this.
say, shouldn't we always worry?
I think the market's gonna be fine, but that doesn't mean I'll have any business, right? I mean, I think that's the nature of our business. We only have the pipeline, we can only see so far. I can't really see what's gonna happen beyond 3 months from now. So 4 months from now, I worry about. Am I normal? Does everybody worry about that?
I don't.
In
Anymore.
June, I was kind of freaking out. So.
Yeah.
The most common statement I hear from folks is they're never quite sure where their next deal's coming from or who it's gonna be, but they know they've got a system in place and they're still working. So they, it's kind of a balancing act in their mind, I think, if they're gonna worry or just be cool about it and say, I'll keep doing what I'm doing.
You said that they have a system in place. I think most of us really don't.
If you don't have a plan, you're planning to fail, and that's where the worry comes from. If you're on plan or off plan.
I have a plan.
And if you're
I haven't
on plan,
done
you
it in a
shouldn't
long
be worrying
time.
because you're on plan. And if you're off plan, you should worry because there's pieces that you're off plan, but at least with a plan, you know what you're not doing.
Well, don't go yet, but
I know, you're acting like people can have a plan and not worry, and to me, I can have a plan and still worry.
Sure.
Very much.
So,
Worry less.
so the answer
Worry
to
less.
this is supposed to be, yes, I'm worried about next year. Okay, cue the next slide.
Manifesting.
What are you gonna do about it? So, and I'm just gonna answer my own question, because yeah, I worry about this, but I haven't been able to do anything about it because I've been too busy.
Yeah.
So what am I gonna do about it? Well, quite honestly, I'm not sure if I'm gonna do anything. But what I think I need to do is reach back out to my sphere, stay in touch with them, send the newsletter, do whatever you do. And agents in different phases of their business, they do different things to get business. So to make sure we get business next year, some may say, well, I need to get back on the horse and start doing open houses again, because that's where I've historically gotten my leads from. A lot of us need to get in touch with our sphere and let everybody know that we're still in the game and still a realtor. I have so many past clients that I haven't talked to in forever. There's things that I could do and there's things that you could do that even if next year is going to be a good year, even without you trying, it could be so much better if you reach out to your sphere. So just don't ignore that. There are things you can do, and now's the time to start for next year if you have time.
Just a little share too, there was an office, and I'm going to talk to Pam about how to do this, but they did a buy or a cost share on first for everybody, just so they could get the statistic of what everybody's losing in their own spheres. And this was pretty crazy. They have an 84-person firm that does really close to the same volume that we do in the Texas market. The average agent lost $3.4 million in sales last year in their own sphere through the first app and across the whole company. That was the average. There were some that were in the tens, some obviously a lot lower, and everything in between.
When you say that, you mean like,
I mean,
people that maybe bought from you
in the
5
past,
years ago and they.
went somewhere else.
With somebody else.
The average was 3.4 million. The average in their company for sales is 4.5 a year. So just think about that, and I guarantee that's the same for me, because I have the first app. I've missed $27 million worth of deals in the last 10 years. Now granted, over half of those are real estate agents in my database. But still, that average holds true from my database, and I haven't sold in 10 years.
So if you just stay in touch, you'd get a portion
You would
of
get
that
at least
business.
half of that by literally calling them once, so that it's pretty sick, so. Plan to
Okay.
do something, right?
Next one, and then how are we doing on?
Doing great, 10:44.
Okay, good. Okay, I touched on this a little bit earlier, but can we start writing offers with terms that are better for the buyers? And well, you've already said, you're writing offers for less than full price.
With an inspection.
With an inspection and a break, yeah.
Oh my God.
So it started. Go ahead to the next one. So, I mean, this is kind of silly. It's just, well, how do you write an offer that's good for a buyer? Well, it's just the opposite of what you've been doing to compete. So we start putting inspection contingencies and appraisal contingencies buffers. I mean, radon contingencies can go back in. We can ask for a home warranty. All these little things that we've been doing. You know, offering post-closing occupancy, less than list price, and then the bottom, use an offer checklist. Dan, can you bring that up?
You bet.
And you can call it what you want, but I really like the idea of when you write an offer, don't just wing it every time. Have some sort of a checklist or a process that you go through where you're gonna forget something.
Apologies, that was not in one of your downloads, so let me just go to this quick. Because everybody has this, this is just a good opportunity. If you still aren't aware of this drive that we have, okay, for this is available to all of you. One of the things in here is what he's looking for, so
Is the offer checklist out there?
yeah, it's in under, oh, there it is.
It's in your.
Contracts and contingencies.
It's also in your forms.
Oh, okay.
That one?
Yep.
Pages, right?
Yeah, 3 pages. Yeah, so this is the form I use or something of a similar version to this, but I guess my best example of this is more than once, I would sell a vacant lot, and then at closing or after closing, they go meet with the builder, and then somewhere along the line, the mailbox and post would come up, and the builder would say, oh, in that neighborhood, you're supposed to get the lot or the mailbox and the post when you buy the lot. Oh, I didn't get one. And then I get the call from the buyer saying, hey, the builder said I'm supposed to get a mailbox and a post when I bought the lot. Well, they didn't buy it from the developer, they bought it from a third party, but guess what? I never asked about it. And therefore, it's now on my list. It's on the 3rd page under the vacant lot section. So I know that when I write an offer, I always look at the 1st and 2nd page, and then the 3rd page I can go to the specific section. So mailbox or post, to me, I know what that means. I know that I need for that neighborhood, I need to find out, is that something that's included? Under the general sections, has anybody paid no attention to this whatsoever, and then you get to the final walkthrough and the buyer says, are they gonna remove that dish satellite from the roof? Come on, it's happened to me multiple times. So it went on the list. Talk about this when you write the offer, not at the walkthrough. And it's one of those things that certainly we're not going to write in an offer today that the seller needs to take down the satellite dish, but in a different market we can. So usually I at least still have that discussion with the buyer and say, is this something you really care about? Usually they're going to say, nah, I don't care about that. But at least that doesn't come up on the final walkthrough and they look at you like it's something that you should have done. So that's a form that if you want it, just email me, I'll send it out to you. Use it as
It's in the drive,
It's
so.
in the drive too.
Sign forms under the Remax library.
Oh, yes, that's right.
It is.
Did you hear that? Did you want to?
So, really quick, guys, if you're still signing into zip forms and filling out forms, emailing them things, getting them signatures, pulling those back in, and not just using DocuSign all by itself, DocuSign forms now exists. I can train you one-on-one on it, and can train you one-on-one on it. You can do it again with us. We can do it on your next listing. We can do it on your next buyer. It is a habit that if you change, you will be extremely happy with how much time it will save. But all those checklists are already in there. All your signatures come back to the place that you send them out from. The staff can help you organize them and do your checklists with you a lot easier. So yeah, there's the shameless plug for that. But I mean, with those lists, if you guys aren't doing your lists or your checklists on your transactions and things are getting goofed up, you also need to consider transaction management. That's our shameless plug there too, because you can't be messing those things up, and those lists are unfortunately messed up a lot by a lot of people. We hear from title people and mortgage people all the time, and people don't follow their lists. So.
If you don't know, there is a Remax library, so to speak, in those forms.
Yep, inside of DocuSign forms, there is a library that says Remax preferred, and then there's 3 other libraries, Wisconsin and the WRA form.
And that's where you're gonna find Tim's perfected forms.
Yep.
As well, we'll always update that.
Speaking of forms,
Yes, there's some new forms out there. I'm not going to go through the forms, but farm offers new, vacant land is new. These are the mandatory use states. So these were just a few months ago, and I don't remember a lot of fanfare emails coming out. I used a farm offer the other day, and wow, this this has got a lot of cool new stuff. First time I ever used the farm offer, but I looked at it and it had all the appropriate contingencies, so I used that offer instead of residential. But just know that those are new and there's some changes. They've been updated mostly to reflect what's been updated, in the residential offer. Addendum O, that's the occupancy agreement. That's a little longer now. That changed recently. Addendum R, if you ever sell a multifamily property, definitely use Addendum R. A lot of times there's questions that come in about, oops, something's messed up in this multifamily deal because they didn't use Addendum R, which has a lot of standard contingencies that cover things that get messed up. The WRA Addendum A has been updated. So take a look at that. That's got a lot of nice contingencies in there. Addendum B, well, water, septic, that's been expanded now to include some more items. And Addendum S, I don't know if this one's really been updated. In zip forms, it had a 2021 tag on it. So looks like it's been updated. I took a quick look at it. It looked exactly the same to me. So I don't think it's materially different, just a disclosure form anyways. Next slide. And then Mr. Mark. Welcome.
Morning.
Jason had a quick question.
Oh, yes, sir.
Is there any update to Ringex's preferred addendum A?
No. But I'm going to touch on that a little bit later when we get to the clause manager and get some input on addendum A as well, and as well as WRA addendum A. So let's table that one.
Okay. Mark, come on up. Next on the Price is Right. Yeah, come on.
Pardon me.
Good morning, everybody.
Did you still want me to introduce you and tell everybody what you've been up to for the last
Let me
week?
introduce myself.
Perfect.
Guys, this is Mark. He's new. He's really nervous and he hates speaking in front of people. Let's give all Mark a good hand. So listen, when I talk to agents, the few that I've spoken with so far, a lot of common things come up. So I've taken those 5 things and kind of distilled them into kind of like a little graphic, which I can send to all of you. And it's basically the 5 silos that you're going to want to consider regardless of what you're doing with marketing, digital marketing, right? So the first thing is your objective. And that seems like a no-brainer, but you can have multiple objectives at one time. So say you want to have increased traffic to your website, or you want to increase your followers to your Facebook page. Those can be concurrent and consecutive goals. So before you do anything and waste your time and start spending money, just kind of know what you want to do, right? It's kind of a no-brainer, but it's really important, and it's a good foundation too. SMART goals tie into that, and I know that's kind of jargony and it's kind of like businessy, but a SMART goal can help you define your objectives. So let's say we want to increase our Facebook followers on our business page. So specific, I want to increase my Facebook page, say by 30 followers in the next 2 months. So that's specific. Measurable, I can track that on the impressions page on your Facebook page. So you can see, and you can also just monitor daily if your follower count is going up. So that's a measurable goal. Is it achievable? Yeah, 20 followers, 30 followers, that's pretty realistic, right? Is it relevant? It is if you want to make more money. It is if you want to increase your reach and you get your brand out there. So, and is it timeable? So right now, Labor Day is coming up. Maybe people aren't going to be in front of their screens or their computers. So instead of 2 months, why don't you push it to 3 months? So let's say the goal that you're going to increase your followers by 30 people in 3 months. Give yourself a little cushion. Audience. So if objective is the what, audience is the who. So everyone talks about their spheres and their databases. That's your audience right now. And that's who's hearing you when you post, right? And so do you want to keep your current audience? If so, that's a strategy. You want to make them happy. You want repeat. You want them to tell their friends. You want multi-generational. You want their kids and their grandkids to start coming to you too. That's your audience. If you want to grow your audience, that's another strategy. So you can do some things on social media to get your voice in front of people who have no idea who the heck you are. And you can use hashtags, or you can add people or tag people. So if you post, any of you post something today, this is your audience, right? If you tag like an event that's going on, or the city of Middleton, or a business, now you've expanded it, right? So now all these people, say a business has 5,000 followers, they're going to see your content too. So when you're thinking of your audience, think about who you're speaking to now and who you could speak to in the future. Tactics, so if objectives are the ideas you have, tactics are the actual things you're doing to achieve them. So I had a professor who had a little red mark on a paper I wrote. He's like, I need tactics, I need tactics. What are tactics, Dan? What do you want from me? And he's like, well, you said you want to do this, how are you going to do it? So that's what your tactics are. So if you want to increase your followers by 30 people in 3 months, how are we going to do that? So you're going to start coming up with post ideas or just any way that you can engage with your audience that maybe they'll want to spread the word or just tell somebody about you. Or if someone goes on your page, what's the call to action? Get them to like, right? So if they go to your page and visit it, that's one thing. If you do your post, that's awesome, that's great. But what's going to make them click the like button? So that would be something that you would consider, and that would be an example of a tactic. Metrics ties it all together, right? So you're doing all this work, you have all these ideas. Are they succeeding? Are you getting ROI for your Google ads or your Facebook ads? And metrics can answer that question. So you can look through and see who's coming to your site. You can break it down by male, by female. Are they looking at your pages on a smartphone or on a computer? Because that's a strategy, right? If everyone that comes to your pages on the computer, you may design things differently that are going to be optimized more for this screen than for this screen. You may look at your age demographics, your male, your female, your income level, education. And I know according to Fair Housing, we can't use a lot of that criteria when we're targeting ads, but you can use it for your own knowledge and just to create marketing personas and kind of have little silos of people that you want to create messaging for. Impressions, for example, marks the amount of time that a content is displayed. So if you pay $100 on an ad and it, according to the recipe you built, it displays 500 times to the world, right? That's your impressions. And if 123 people clicked on it, that's your reach. So there's a difference between impressions and reach. And you want to know that difference because if you're spending money on ads, you're going to want to know who's actually clicking on it. And if one isn't working, try a variation. You can do A/B testing and just play around with it. So basically you're just getting more bang for your buck, so to speak. So that's pretty much all I have. That's my TED Talk.
Sure.
Does anybody have any questions?
So I hope you guys do get questions. Number one, if you haven't gotten a chance to meet one-on-one with Mark yet, let me give you guys a little bit of an idea because you're not going to talk. He's not going to brag about himself.
I'm never speaking.
So yeah, he's not going to brag about himself. But so this is what we've done. This will be Friday. Tomorrow will be the end of 4 weeks or 5.
5.
So the first 2 weeks that he was here, not knowing anything about real estate or Remax, learned about every single system, our whole entire brand, our subset of brands, some of our affiliates that are here, things like that. Learned about every single system and tool we have. He's got a degree in marketing and strategic communications and worked really hard in school to get those skills. And it was awesome because then the last 3 weeks, he's built out a menu of stuff to be able to do these things because a lot of this right here floats right over everyone's head. And not only that, again, it goes back to it's one thing to collect this data. It's another thing to spray and pray, which I would argue 90% of this room is used to doing with their online dollars. But we are now over that era and we're done with that. It is not, you just need to be in the game and spending money and running ads. We need to be running ads specifically to your people, and your people are not one channel. They're not one audience, they're not one group. So we really do need to get much more strategic. As Director of Strategic Communications standing here, in our voice, in what we're doing. Lead generation is this. So you guys are all repeat referral. Most of you in this room get 75% or more of your business doing repeat referral, but just don't get it twisted. Lead generation is repeat referral too. You hitting those people, and we're all losing a gap of it right now that we couldn't have. So that's why he's here. Take your meeting with him. It doesn't cost you anything to meet with him. He's going to help you with a roadmap. Even if you don't use any of his paid services that he's going to also provide, there is free services. He's going to be doing a couple just open hours each week where you can just hit him with whatever marketing stuff you've got, what kind of questions you have, what kind of support you need, so that's why he's here. I am super impressed at what you've gotten done in the amount of time. It's ridiculous.
Hi.
You'll see as things start going on, because he's going to be managing things. I'm hiring him, you know, for recruiting stuff. There's me, Christy is going to be hiring him for her interior design stuff. There's a lot of different businesses he can do this for, not just real estate. So the services are something all small business people should be doing, not just real estate people. So there's my end of spiel for Mark, but please, warm welcome to him, and he's really talented, so. And he's gonna go, like, try and.
There's a pot of coffee over here if it really needs a refill.
Excellent.
All right, Jason, what did you want to talk about?
Oh, you asked, oh, I wanna talk about the addendum A.
Thank you, sir. There you go.
And that all ties in with the clause manager. How many people are, I mean, is anybody typically using any addendum A? Ours, the WRA, any version of it? You are, okay. I'm seeing more and more that, I mean, we're keeping these offers slim, clean, small.
Yeah, I use it when I can.
Right.
Yeah.
I rarely use it, but I see the majority of the other brokerages have one, and it's only 2 pages, and it hits a lot of important stuff that, in a sense, we're not protecting our buyers with when we don't use ours.
Do you build your own?
We have our own. I just, you know, usually you're writing in some of the stuff in the other,
Yeah.
you know, in the provision section of the offers, but
Do you think your offer in this market, do you think your offers look better compared to an offer with that extra document?
I think it looks better than having a 7-8 page addendum A, because I think that overwhelms some listing agents and sellers,
Yeah,
right? When you have our 17, 18 pages of stuff.
that's why I asked if you build your own. Because I don't want to send off a 6-page addendum, so I just build my own.
And that's really the idea of the clause manager, to make it easier to build your own as you go. And I think it really becomes much more powerful if you dive into the clause manager and not just look at the office or the global clauses, but do your own. Because we all have preferred language that we use, or different clauses that we like to use. But
One thing I will say about a couple that I've seen, they've addressed some of the issues of the current market. The appraisal gap,
Yep.
the inspection gap, if they have an inspection, but they do, you know, so the language is already there, which is similar to the clause manager, but it's
Yep.
actually on
on a
an
document.
addendum A. Yeah.
I think an addendum A makes it easier to include some of the disclosure language, which, I mean, those are right here, kind of those standard buyers responsible to ultimately hire the inspector, or to make sure that the inspector is okay. You know, the hazardous materials to make sure, hey, we talked about this, or you signed and it was in here that asbestos is bad. So just some of those standard disclosures. It's nice to have some pre-checked items in addendum A, but as a listing agent, when I get addendum A's, I got one the other day on the listing, somebody wrote an offer and they had the inspection contingency completely rewritten in their addendum A.
Wow.
And I had to read through the whole damn thing to make sure they weren't trying to trick me. You know, what's the catch? What's different? Obviously something's different. And it turned out it was very good. It addressed a problem that I addressed in a different way. But as a listing agent, I had to read through that and understand it, and man, that kind of sucked. But I like it, but for that reason, I also don't like it. So there's give and take. A 2-page addendum A is nice, but you can fill up 2 pages
Sure.
if you just start putting all the
In 8
disclosure
font,
language
right?
in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's where I've struggled a lot, is do we have an 8-page addendum that covers everything under the sun? and rewritten inspection contingencies so it's better for our buyers, or keep it really slim at 2 pages, but then you're really not able to put much in there. So that's where I struggle a little bit, and how you might answer, somebody else might answer differently. And when we do an addendum A, boy, you can't customize it. You fill in that blank, and that's it. So I'm not fully on board with, not fully against updating addendum A, but I'm not fully on board with it because I don't know that, because that's a one solution. I don't know that one solution fixes it for everyone.
And I agree, and the only reason I brought it up is because we brought it up for a few years now.
Yeah.
And now we're in a market where I rarely use one.
Right.
So it hasn't.
Hasn't mattered recently.
Right.
Let me ask this, how many people here have used the clause manager? Okay, so a little over half, so that's good. Who has customized it and used your own, added your own clauses? Very nice. Good.
Of course you would.
Did you get distracted, Dan?
I was actually gonna try and have you on there for the sewer still talking for a while, but.
So I just added a few more in, the pre-approval, insurance claims one, some simple ones to add in. Giving the seller the option to choose a closing date. I drafted this for a buyer the other day, and I said, this is the closing date, the seller, you can change it, you've got 5 days after closing, you can pick it anytime between this day and this day. So it's just a simple paragraph if that's, one way you wanna, because sometimes sellers, they say, oh, anytime's good. When you ask them what's your preferred closing date. Well, they have a preference, but they're just not telling you. So that's a way to say you can pick because we're flexible.
Lane says he loves your clause manager,
Oh, good.
so just wanted to give him a shout out.
So, yeah, I like the feedback of, does everybody want an addendum A, or should we dive further into clause manager? And if we did do an addendum A, I don't know that we'd have a agreement on it.
I think the consensus has been with the people I've met that our addendum A becomes redundant after a bit, and an attorney look at a form we print is important, and so the timing of that doesn't work out well, and that this is a better solution. The idea though is change and adapting to something else, and maybe customizing something else that again, you will also have to change in 6 months. So I think the pick and choose which ones you want is the best answer at this time. My favorite being that there's a co-broke and here's what I get paid. Because that's the number one complaint I get from people is someone said this on the MLS and now they've changed it to this on the MLS. Or you've got it on an addendum A, that this co-broke situation is what you're gonna get paid is pretty much.
One thing with that is I always have my clients initial the MLS, the listing detail. I PDF that and have them initial it so that can't change.
Good idea.
So.
Nice. Does anybody have concern? I have a concern for you with clause manager. I'm just curious if it's a valid concern. When I write these, put a clause in there. Traditionally in an addendum A, you'd strike something out, or you'd fill in a blank, or there'd be a default value. When we do it in clause manager, there's more functionality because you're basically cutting and pasting, and then you can customize it however you want. I've tried to make it easy and obvious that here's a blank you need to fill in, but it's really important that you read what you just pasted in there and make sure it makes sense. For example, if something references a line number in the residential offer to purchase, I don't know that we have any out there that do that right now. But if you just add that into the condo form and move on and think it's all good, well, that's not gonna make any sense. So my caveat with this, I guess, is make sure you read it and understand it and make sure it makes sense and that it reads correctly. So I try to put blanks in there and then sometimes default values if it makes sense.
Half the people in this company are gonna print that and reuse it in their own fashion.
Yes.
So that's certainly okay.
Dan, do you or can you take a minute and just, not real long, just to go through for some that haven't used it, just open up any form and in your preferred application there. I just go in, find a clause, paste it, edit it.
You want me to show you in DocuSign, or you want me to show you which one?
I guess I
Zip
use
forms.
DocuSign transaction room. Is that?
I'll do it in there. You guys, the clause library obviously still does exist in Zip Forms, and Zip Forms did make its announcement, or WRA made its announcement, I believe yesterday or the day before. We are going to continue to receive Zip Forms as a service. I'm going to go into, I guess, any room. Doesn't really matter. And I need to make up a form. Actually, I'll make one up quick. I'll do this. And I guess it doesn't really matter, does it?
I've numbered the clauses in the clause manager, initially thinking, well, that'll sort them all nice. It doesn't. I don't know the rhyme or reason for the sorting, but it's not alphabetical or numeric, so it's a little jumbled out there that way, but at least you can pick the category and then choose from a smaller subset of clauses within that category.
You go in here, or are you going through Zip Forms at this point?
From here, I add something from Zip Forms. I go into Zip.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show the way Tim does it. Just know that I'd love everybody to start trying DocuSign forms if you haven't. They get filled from your details page. So if you start filling your details page out, here's the other cool thing. If you start your Google Contacts can send it to Booch. Booch can create the room for you. The room can already have the information. So we are finally getting to the point of entering your client's data, phone, email, and whatever one time if we start cascading them in the right order.
The perfect merge.
Yeah, but
Those are steps.
there's always going to be steps
We
going
could have
on
plans just for that next week if everybody would like that.
at any time. All right. And you just want me to go grab,
Anything with a text field.
okay. The other nice thing with the other one is we've been able to group them now, so that's kind of nice.
That is very cluttered up in Zip Forms, and you can't.
Zip Forms is really hard. DocuSign right now, I can just pull up and we already have them in quick groups for you. You can grab the whole group and they're all, it's just a little bit easier. Yeah. All right, so once you grab a document that you're in here filling out, Tim is basically what he's showing is, and if you haven't seen this before, of course.
Been a while since you've been in Zip Forms?
I don't use it anymore. I don't use it anymore. But you come into here, any text field, like he's saying. So obviously, normally if you're going in clauses or whatever, you're probably going in your additional contingency lines somewhere. You'll notice a little pencil right here, and it's very hard to see, but it's always there. Once you click it, there's some options here. This is for whether you like to write with capitals, non-capitals, whatever. But the clause library is hidden ever so discreetly in this little icon that looks like a scroll or a piece of paper. Once you're in here, under broker and personal is if you want to write some of your own stuff that you want to use over and over again. But here, Tim has put all of the stuff in here already. Most popular is the ones that are obviously going to bring up, the most popular used ones. These are just like to help you with categories, but obviously if you look at the categories, they're pretty self-explanatory. But a lot of people are asking about escalation clauses or how I should do this or how I should word that. This is supposed to take place at the addendum A. So it's probably a good idea, in my opinion, if you've always used the addendum A to help you write offers, meaning like help you remember maybe what you should include or not include, or what you should do to protect somebody or help someone, it might just be a good idea every time you're in here now, if you're not going to use an addendum A anymore, make sure you click on this each time and kind of go through these, think about them a little bit, personal property or home repair or an escalation clause or whatever. But once you grab one, let's just in this particular case say you wanted to do a escalation clause. This is what Tim's talking about. This isn't perfect because in an addendum A, just like in an addendum A isn't perfect, even though you X the box, you still have to include the proper information. These are called syntaxes, I believe is what Tim taught me, but they're basically placeholders. So even though I can insert this now, and I've got my escalation clause in there, and of course I picked one that doesn't fit there, but
That's
regardless,
for a blank addendum.
correct. So regardless, those spaces now though they're here. So I have to remember now, and this is what Tim is his concern about this method. I have to go back to those blank spots now and make sure that I put in what I need to put in. Now I truly did pick like the crappiest one I could have picked for that. I should have just picked a small one. But regardless, I now need to go back to those spots where I can see, and put in my number of days or whatever the heck, right? You can use multiples though, so even though I just added that, let's just assume we are on a blank addendum, which is what I should have grabbed, thanks Tim. I would have thrown it right down in here. I can hit that button again and add another one and add another one, even in the same field. So it'll let you use that clause, insert that clause manager whenever you want. The other method really, really quickly, for those of you that are like, you're not in that level of zip forms, whatever, just please also remember inside of your Google Drive, your shared drive, and again, I know this is the second time I'm showing it today, RE/MAX Preferred Resources, right here, contracts and contingencies. That offer checklist that we already reviewed is in there, but also all of the master contingency lists are right in here for you to cut and paste.
Pull that up.
You bet.
Just so I can just scroll up a little bit.
Sure.
Keep scrolling, keep scrolling. Okay. So the ones that are grayed out are kind of placeholders. Those are not in the clause manager.
It's not done with them yet.
So not everything is in there. If you're looking for something and it's not in there and you say, man, I want this in there, just email me. I can get it in there fairly quickly, or add it into your personal clause. And I can help you do that or show you where to go to click on that to start setting up your own as well. And some of these will never make it in. They're not that important. They're kind of outliers that never get used. But this is kind of the mastered list. Anything that looks like this is in there. The ones that are red are in that most popular list.
Cool.
And that's,
Okay.
that's in Google Drive.
Google Drive, yeah, all of you should, when you go into your Google Drive, even your individual one right now, you should just be able to click on My Shared Drive, and under Shared Drives, you guys should see RE/MAX Preferred Resources. If you don't, just shoot services an email or whatever, or Fdesk, and we'll just add you to the drive. If there was some reason, you guys should all be in there, though.
I've referenced the contingency list 50 times now.
Oh,
I'm sure I have enough agents that are like, I want to know the right wording for this, I want to bug Tim, I know I'm just bugging you, I tried Dan, whatever, I'm like, I want this list.
yeah.
Every time they're like, oh my gosh.
So yeah, so you just need it to cut and paste into your own thing, and that's actually how I use it in DocuSign, because my drive is usually always open anyway, so I do and cut and paste in there. But just so you know, your same thing inside of DocuSign without the zip form site, you now have this is only a month old. So if you didn't already know this, you can store your own templates in there now too. So like if you always put in the same verbiage in your listings or your offers or whatever, and you just don't want to copy that every time, you can actually create your own templates, your own personal templates, and that's something we can't do in here quite yet, or we tried to do and it didn't really work out. So anyway.
And the fact that this is customizable, I think the escalation clause is a good example. Like, leave the one that I have out there says, any other bona fide any other bona fide offer that's received that does not have a home sale contingency will escalate this offer. So I believe that's what's in there now. I had a discussion about that language with the buyer. And I said, if another home sale, you're not going to get escalated by a home sale contingency offer. But Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, know that that means that the seller's looking at another offer with a home sale contingency that's not as high as what you're willing to go, but it's higher than your starting point, and that wouldn't escalate yours, and the seller may not be worried about that buyer selling their house. So that means that we're putting this in there to protect you, but in this market, that may actually hurt you. So they said, yeah, take that out. No, we'll be escalated by any, we want to make sure we beat any offer. So I mean, I guess in an addendum A, you could have struck that part. But here you can add something like that in, you can take it out. So it's nice that you have the flexibility to just kind of take the standard language that works, and modify it a little bit versus starting over.
Last piece in here, if you do find yourself
though, in this market or whatever, using the same 2 or 3, one other just option for you to do is create your own short 1-page addendum A and have it right here in your forms templates, your own personal templates, like I said. So you could take a blank addendum or modify any other doc exactly the way you kind of want to reuse it. It'll already have your stuff on it, and then you can save it here and reuse it as a template. So you can never have to redo that specific one again. Anyway, Jason?
Just speaking to the home sale contingency on the escalation, I had a buyer said, we don't care if there's a home sale contingency on the offer that pushes us up, but we don't wanna go above that. So we wrote essentially 2 escalation clauses, one for a home sale contingency and one for not. The one for not just said we'll match what that would be, just an idea. And it was my buyers that came up with that thought, not me.
Well, and another idea, and this gets complicated, is, I mean, if you're writing a true cash offer, no financing, no appraisal, it's truly cash, well, you don't necessarily want to be escalated up $30,000 by an offer with that needs financing and an appraisal, and they have 3% down, because I mean they can throw these big high numbers out and they're protected, because if it doesn't appraise it, but they can use that offer to escalate yours. That was more of a concern for me in that case where the buyer said, no, we want to beat every other offer, and then that's what happened. Our cash offer got escalated by a really bad offer with a high price, but we talked about that going in, and so it all was fine. It didn't appraise, and then they still bought it, and they were fine, but it was important that we talked about it ahead of time. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to complicate that, and in some cases it's good, but I think more important, it's just good to talk about those things up front with the buyers.
When you did that, to me, I think it was brilliant. But did you have to like pick up the phone and call the other agent and be like, do you kind of understand what I'm saying here? Because like you don't want to like be offensive to the other agent, but that's pretty complicated.
Well, it's complicated in theory, but that's why I didn't write it into all one. I had 2 separate clauses, and then I explained it as I sent the email, or sent the offer.
Yeah,
over.
you're very good at that.
And I just, and the other thing that a lot of people have been doing, we talked about it months ago, you communicate, like you're saying, with the listing agent, but bullet out the key components of your offer in your email, so it's right there. Hey, this is a X price offer with this amount down, this amount earnest money.
Yes,
it's been really
an offer could be reduced to about 6 bullet points,
right.
So you get the point across.
Right.
Okay, next one, Dano. And this is the last piece of it, writing back to writing competitive offers. Oh no, sorry, back up. Coming soon listings.
This is the hottest topic right now.
Oh, yeah.
I say they don't really exist because I mean, you can't tell anybody about a coming soon listing. As soon as you can tell them about it, you already have the listing, so it's not coming soon. So I came up with a better name, showings coming soon listing. Doesn't have the same ring to it, but you get the point. I mean, what we're really talking about is, hey, I have a listing, we're not allowing showings yet, but I'm gonna start marketing it, and then we're gonna allow showings starting at this time. That's really what it is, because you cannot advertise a listing until that listing start date starts. You can have the seller sign a listing today. The listing start date isn't for a month. You don't have a listing for a month. That listing start date is the date that matters. So prior to that, and this has nothing to do with the MLS policy or rules, this is license law. You cannot advertise a property that you don't have an active listing contract on. I think it was 2017 they changed that. Prior to that, you could advertise a property as long as you have permission from the seller. But 2017 or so, they said, nope, you must have a valid listing contract in order to advertise.
So the listing contract has to be started,
The
even if
start-
it's no showing for 3 weeks.
Right, yes. As soon as the listing contract starts, yes. I mean, even if it's in withdrawn status, you could still advertise.
Sure.
Delayed, yeah. So,
And that means no sign out in front of you.
you cannot have a sign out, so if your listing start date is tomorrow, and you ordered the sign yesterday, and the sign company was on top of things and they installed it today, you're in breach of license law. If the start date is tomorrow and your sign gets installed today. So no sign, no posting on social media, and this one's come up recently, not even posting in our internal group. Which there's a few nuances to that. Technically, I believe it's okay,
Can I speak to that?
but
Yeah.
in a moment,
Yeah.
because it sets it up to make it way too easy to break the policy. Because if you post internally, what you're really trying to do is tell another agent that has a buyer about your listing, and what are they gonna do? They're gonna tell the buyer, or they're gonna repost it, or they're gonna forward it. So there's a couple of things at play. One is license law, one is MLS policy, one is company policy. And I think you're gonna talk about what the MLS board said, and they kind of said, oh, you can't do that. So we're following that recommendation of, so we're making our company policy basically what the MLS has said is the policy.
And also say, you can say 3-bedroom house in a school district is coming soon. So you can give your peers that heads up.
Yeah, so when we say you can't advertise, okay, before the listing starts, well, what does advertising mean? But when NAR came out with the MLS 8.0 clear cooperation policy, they were pretty specific on what advertising was. But that only applies after you have a listing and how it has to do with the MLS. Prior to having a listing, the MLS really has nothing to do with it. It's all license law, state statute, and they say you can't advertise a listing until the listing starts. Well, what does advertising mean? There's some gray area there. Well, my recommendation is stay out of the gray area. Yeah, if you say, hey, I've got a listing in such and such neighborhood on such and such street, and you think you're getting away with it, and you put a picture out there, but you don't put an address out there, you know what? You're advertising. And you're way too far into that. I'd say you're out the other end of that gray area. Okay, go ahead, Dan.
The word, and I know it applies to your story perfectly, but the word that we all need to worry about, think about is identifiable. If the property that you're speaking to anyone out there is identifiable, and you're holding a license, and that conversation is to yield interest in selling said property, that's you using your license. And so as soon as you identify it, and when he's saying identifiable, if I told you it was a 2-bedroom, a 2-bedroom ranch, you know, with a funky porch on such and such street, you're gonna know what house that is, because in this market, you're gonna drive there, you might even crawl through the backyards to figure out which one it is. So you've identified it. So, but that word is like kind of the key word. Now, it's also super important, since we're all together and we get this opportunity. Clear cooperation was created because we're being sued by the federal government, and be very clear, we're still being sued by the federal government, and our commissions are going to be coming under forever scrutiny, you know, like they always really have. But the federal government just did not give us a pass on a settlement that was pretty reasonable. So they're going to dig a little bit further. So as far as the way we operate, when people, when you hear other agents saying the MLS is the Gestapo, they're always doing this, screw the MLS, like the reason this is coming down is because the consumers and the government have spoken loud enough that there's enough problems going on with people not doing the right thing. Not necessarily here as much. This is the Midwest. We're maybe a little bit more well behaved. I don't know, but like, just understand that this isn't something the local entities are thinking up to make it hard on everybody, because that's the message we keep hearing, you know, back as far as on the board level and stuff, that it's like more rules, and it's like they're not coming from us as an industry, they're definitely coming from outside. So it's to best protect those data and keep us an integral part of the transaction. Otherwise we could be TripAdvisor real quick. So we need to support it.
And you can't beg for forgiveness later now. There's lots of.
Yeah. Oh, well, you know what, and I might as well then end with this, so Pam and I got to share and then fine, but, you know, I can't speak to when you guys get caught, I'm on the board, I have to recuse myself for them deciding. So we're not without reprieve, but we paid thousands already this year in fines, guys, and it's real. So, you know, when you see other people do it or whatever, hey, give them a little whisper, because we are at least still in an MLS where you need to be turned in to be caught. Which is really nice. That is very rare too, by the way. Around the country, they can go back and look in your records and say, oh, you entered it like this and then changed it later. You're just already caught. The computer catches you and you just get the fine in the mail. At least here you've got a reprieve. So if you see a fellow agent or somebody in the industry even, not even your own company, that you see is screwing up, it might just be a really awesome, kind thing to reach out and be like, hey, did you realize this sign went up, you know, and your thing isn't on the MLS? Because that's how our agent got in trouble. The sign was up, the agent couldn't find it on the MLS, literally thought they were working the MLS wrong because they couldn't find it, so called the MLS for help. And that's how they saw the sign. And the sign was up and it wasn't supposed to be up.
Because we used to be able to do that, and it feels okay.
Right.
But it's not anymore.
What about the day of? Like if you're listing that night, can you put it up that day?
That's
One
still
day.
okay.
Still have the one day before you.
What do you mean listing that night?
Say if it's going live that night, like if I'm.
Well, going live-
Photos.
Going live doesn't matter. Going live matters for MLS, you need to have it in within 4 days max, or within 1 business day of advertising. But you're talking about a sign. So going live in the MLS is not as important as when that listing start date is. So, but, you know, so if your listing start date is today, it's today. You can't have your sign up yesterday. Your sign can only go in today. And then as soon as that sign goes in, that's advertising. So you're gonna have to have it in the MLS by tomorrow, unless tomorrow's Saturday, because it's not a business day.
Oh, and for clarification on why, by the way, our MLS all of a sudden became like like that public, the general public has decided in these lawsuits in Washington that if a home is for sale, it ought to be on the internet. 20 years ago, once the sign was in the yard, you just told everybody to the extent you could tell everybody. Now they're saying the public demands that if a property goes online, just because they're in the comfort of their own home doesn't mean they should have to drive by and know that it's there. The internet, within a day or so, like what's reasonable, they think is public. That's public knowledge now. So it's not that the internet's all of a sudden in charge of anything we're doing. The general public is saying the internet is a source of information for when something is available to everyone, not just people in that neighborhood, or not just the people that Tim, the broker, decided to notify, or not just these people. They're basically saying, you withhold it from the internet for a period of time, you're definitely screwing around because you are withholding it from the world. So there is some argument to be said. If one property goes on the internet and one doesn't, well, there's sure as hell a hell of a lot more people that know about this one. You know, so they have some, I guess they have beef, and they have good beef. So we need to kind of play accordingly and not bitch and moan about it, I guess, because it's necessary.
Well, it's nice that the rules, just like your deed restrictions. Maybe you want to put your car up on blocks in the front yard, but you don't want all your neighbors doing it. So where it forces us to follow more rules, at least everybody's following the rules.
So if you get a listing, and you go around, you go back to the office, and send it over to sign master and say, hey, put the sign up. And then you gotta go back out the next day and measure it up, because it's maybe a vacant property. You go measure it up, and it takes another day to get it on, so you're like 2 days later.
Sure.
That's in violation.
So let me ask first.
If you didn't tell anybody.
You said get a listing, say today. What does get a listing today mean?
Okay, here's the scenario. You sign the listing on Monday night.
Okay.
Or Monday afternoon, you sign the listing, you go back to the office, punch in the sign line, sign master.
Well, here,
When's
let's
the listing start date?
Monday.
Monday.
Okay, because that's different than when they sign. That's a set, a lot of times they're
Oh,
the same,
term.
but that's different. When the listings, because you can sign it on Monday, listing start date could be Wednesday. So that's always the most important term, but when is the listing start date of the term?
Go through it again. Sign the listing Monday afternoon.
Okay.
That day, you go back to the office and you punch it in the sign master and get a sign out when you're there. The next day, you go down and you measure up the house, vacant house. So, and then the next day, probably Wednesday, you get it on the computer. You're in violation.
No.
So is the listing start date Monday?
So the listing start date is Monday.
Sign went in on Tuesday?
Sign, yeah, I'll go with yeah.
Okay, so that's advertising.
Okay.
So you need to have it in the MLS within 1 business day of that,
Okay.
so Wednesday.
Wednesday.
So if you get it in on Wednesday, you're fine.
Okay.
Now, on Monday, did you come back to the office and post something on social media?
Oh, no way.
Did
Gee,
you,
fine.
did did you tell an agent from another brokerage about your listing on Monday?
Did I tell an agent from another brokerage? No.
Okay, because that's considered public advertising. So that would mean, now Monday, you have 1 business day to get it in the MLS. So it's always, when is the listing start date? When did you first start any form of public advertising? And then you need to be in with 1 business day after that.
And then-
with a max of 4.
And then if you don't tell anybody, you don't get to sign it. You're just really, you went and signed the listing and went home for the rest of the week. At day 4, business day, it needs to be on the MLS.
No, 4 calendar days.
Calendar, sorry, yeah, no longer a business day. 4 days, it needs to be on, regardless of who, whether you told anybody or.
Friday night, you gotta get it in by Monday.
You got it.
And it's gonna go, when it goes live in the MLS, you're gonna say, no showings until Friday. Can you show it yourself
No.
before it goes in the MLS? Okay, good, good answer.
Or away.
A year ago, certainly 2 years ago, everybody probably would have answered that differently, and actually, I think a couple of years ago, it might have been okay. But now they've clarified that no, we caught on to your shenanigans. No using that 4-day buffer to show it and try to sell it before you put it on the MLS.
Now, what about the trick that people are doing where they say no showings and then they get a sight unseen offer subject to viewing the property?
It's not really a trick.
It's
No,
a
I know you
trend.
can do it.
It's legitimate. So here's the things to consider. I mean, there's different things on the buyer and seller side, but what a listing agent says in the MLS isn't binding really on anyone. It just speaks to their professionalism if they don't live up to it. So if you're the listing agent saying that, you might want to make sure that the seller's going to back you up, and we're really not going to accept anything if we get offers before this, even sight unseen offers. Otherwise, you're saying this and you might not be able to follow through. But if you receive an offer, it's your duty to present that offer, even if they haven't seen it. The only way around that is if you have it in writing in the listing contract where the seller has agreed, you will not present any offers to me before Monday, even if you get an offer. That gives you the power to tell another agent, no, I'm not even going to tell the seller about your offer. Their first response back is going to be, it's your duty, you have to. No, I don't. It's in writing in my listing contract that I don't. My seller and I have talked about this. So as a listing agent, you may want to do something like that before you say no offers until Monday. But most people don't do that. You get a sight unseen offer. Some sight unseen offers are true sight unseen offers that are binding. A lot of them are sight unseen showings on Friday. You get the sight unseen offer on Wednesday. After acceptance, they want 24 hours to look at the property and decide if they still want to buy it. Number 1, that's a wrong way to write an offer. It's called an illusory contract because the buyer has complete control. For no reason at all, they can kill the deal. So legally, it's not right. It's unenforceable. However, when does legality ever really come into play? I mean, how often do we go in front of the judge and lawyer out? So it's wrong, but it's done quite often and it's done successfully quite often. So I can't say you should do it, but I can say it gets done a lot. Now, what the MLS has said, if you're not allowing showings until Friday, Can't allow showings until Friday. However, if you get an offer and the terms of that offer, or you accept an offer and the terms of that offer say that you have the right to see the property, you know, within 24 hours of the offer, the terms of the offer override the MLS rules. So it is legitimate to get a sight unseen offer, your seller can accept it, within 24 hours they come see it, say, yep, we still want to buy it. In that case, it's okay, you're not breaking MLS rules to allow that buyer to see it. So if you're the agent that wrote that offer and did it, good for you. If you're the agent that was waiting until Friday to show it, that sucks.
Well, what it is, in my eyes, it's a trick by the listing agent to try to double dip their own listings because nobody else can see it. They call the sign that's in the yard, well, sure, here's how we gotta do it.
Oh, you're saying before it's even in the MLS.
So, right.
Because a lot of times it's
So even if it's in the MLS and delayed, you know, that's how they're doing it.
Oh, yeah. Well, and other agents can do that well. It's not always the listing agent doing it. I've done that as the buyer agent, and got it accepted, got it in there before the showing day. So yeah, it's the listing agent.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying that another agent can't, their client.
But they're less likely to know about it.
But I think it's, they're less likely to know about it, and I think it's a trick by the listing agents to try to double dip it, so.
Yeah.
There's a couple that I know that everything they got is delayed.
Well,
Their new listing, oh,
But
look
I
at,
guess
got five
it's,
of them delayed.
It's maybe a little bit of gaming the system, but they're not breaking any rules. And we know some agents that are right on the line with not quite breaking the rule, but boy, they're pushing it.
Well, and let's face it, you know, like everybody has different sales tactics, everybody has different ways they go about doing things or whatever. I still revert back to the best comment from all of this very complicated and whatever summer. Zillow is out Zillowing. Worry about what you're doing. You know, like everybody's out kind of doing their thing. There's certainly the limited service. There's going to be these people. There's going to be these people. Guys, I said this to somebody the other day because I know limited service has been up there for a lot of people throughout this market too. Because some people are struggling against them, but it's like, let them do what they do. They're doing their thing. Understand that there's at least a chunk. There's about a 13% of the population right now because of how easy the perception is to sell a home. There's another chunk of the people that personality-wise are not going to hire a professional to do it when normally they would. So there's going to be, when you hear an agent who's doing 100 deals a year say that person's kicking my butt right now, they're kicking their butt by 13 deals, and that's about exactly how many deals that should be affecting them by this market. What they should look at is the fact that with volume service and, you know, whatever in commissions, the actual straight up commission dollars, they're better off. So losing the DIY in a market where the conditions sway that a little bit anyway, who thinks now as we go back towards the other way, is every day on market average goes up, our value proposition as real estate professionals goes up. Because you have longer holds, you have marketing dollars, you have more things that need to be done. So if you're surviving right now, or better yet, thriving in this, it will only get easier as we get into at least a somewhat more balanced market before it goes all the way to the other end. And then welcome to 2008 and 9 again. There'll be way too many listings. You'll have 15 listings and you will only be able to sell 3 of them. It'll go the other direction. The pendulum will swing back again. So anyway, that's my spiel on that. But this is, oh, by the way, the other major companies we compete against in Madison, for Weber, Start Company, I can't say for all of them, but a good majority of the major competitors in the top 10 in the MLS have all decided to not practice this, to not try to do an internal or what they call a broker exclusive listing.
Would you leave?
No, just an exclusive, meaning they're only keeping it in-house or whatever, because that is a legal option.
Viridian?
Yep, Viridian as well, and they've actually changed their tactics a little bit here.
I'm
Some
sure they
people
have now that
have.
the market is softened.
You got it. So,
Can I ask her, this might be kind of a dumb question regarding the no posting internally. So, teams.
same issue.
But I mean, like if I bring a buyer's agent with me to my listing appointment.
That's, I would say, well, what do you mean?
Well, okay, just say my buyer's agent is also my measurer. While I'm doing the listing appointment, say, hey, you know what, you might be.
If you guys are taking that listing together, you guys both can't tell somebody else. You both know
Right.
you know it's
Well,
okay.
Right, everybody, it's,
Well,
Because
one,
even that
one-on-one
person
like
could,
that, I believe is different than
It is.
posting it to 100 agents, even if they're all our own agents. So one-on-one stuff internally, I would believe is okay like that.
I mean, just like your systems of like, hey, you know, like, these are what I'm working on, they can access.
Well, you gotta remember, your photographer finds out about it days before they're supposed to.
That's true.
So if all of a sudden your photographer is out telling people, guess what? Your photographer is making, is doing something wrong. Are they abided by certain rules and license?
Right.
So we can't control this.
That's a good point.
We can't control this to its entirety, but no, that's a good pointed question. Teams, you would have to, if you're a team leader on this call right now, yeah, you better make sure everybody on the team, the next time you guys all have coffee, remembers that if you know the listings coming in, they're under that same, they're under that same guise to not blab all over the
They
place.
should be aware of where that potential is going
Sure.
and when it's going live and.
And I'm sure, it's like I said, some small teams are still going to do this internally on purpose. Okay? So, and we can't police the world, so we can probably stop beating that dead horse.
And the real issue, I mean, when we get a listing, it's the brokerage that gets the listing.
Right.
However, the more people that know, and I think this is the real problem, the more agents that know, the more likely it is that one of them is going to say too much and do something wrong. And that's the real issue that we're trying to avoid. Okay, next slide.
Yes, sir. As I just turned it back.
I don't know if my shoes are sticky or the floor is sticky, but it keeps sounding sticky.
It wasn't before.
Just real quick on this, we've all seen the variations of offers due by Sunday, showing start on Friday, offers presented at 6 p.m. on Monday, and then you started seeing little notes of, but seller reserves the right to accept an offer early. I mean, we've all seen different variations of this, okay? And I think that's going to start to change. I've had to change depending on the price point. If it's a $700,000 property, I'm not probably going to say offers presented on Monday. I'm probably just going to take them as they come and hope we get one. But if it's 250 or 300,000, maybe I still do okay, we're going to wait until Monday. What I've been seeing is even in the 350 Viridian resale range is not getting 100 showings, getting 10 showings over the weekend. Still getting 3-4 offers, which is really good, but not getting 50, 60, 70 showings with 20 offers. But when you only get that many showings, you get a little nervous, and then you don't get any offers until Sunday. So I'm definitely feeling a change out there, but does anybody have any good thoughts or as far as you're the listing agent, how do you strategize that? Are you still doing the wait until Monday? Are you not? Anybody have any tips, suggestions, bragging on how good they do?
I think you ask your seller first what they want, right?
Good point.
The challenge has been when you don't get any offers and you're sitting there Sunday night and you're wondering what's going on. I really think it's the property that dictates a lot.
And please, if you date things in the comments or in the broker comments, and you say things like, better get in here quick, this one's going to sell fast, offers due by August 1st, and it's October, and it still says offers due by August 1st.
Yes.
That's the same as having a snow picture up in April.
Right.
So please update that, yes. Okay, we touched on sight unseen offers, so let's go to the next one. And how are we doing on time?
12 minutes.
Okay, so we'll probably have pizza pretty soon. Okay. Just, we've kind of beat this one to death, but let's touch on a few things. Dan, can you click on that and go out to the website?
You bet.
The WRA has made, I think, 6 videos on being competitive and different versions of that, or different topics within that. I think they're 20, 30 minutes long each. We're not going to watch them today, but you can just go out to WRA and you can find them out there. I think it's in the video or Legal Update Live. So legal, I think that's where you find them.
Yep, legal
updates,
legal videos.
legal videos. Okay.
Oh, oops, sorry. There it was.
Well, somewhere.
Legal updates library. Oh no, that's gonna be all of them. It was under videos. It's there.
Okay. So anyways, there's different topics. If you really want to dive into any of the topics, the WRA, the lawyers there, they really get into the good nitty gritty of what you need to watch out for, and they get into some of these topics of are these the 13.
Yep. Episode 13 through 18.
Yeah, you can click on that. I think it brings up the different ones.
Yep.
And so what do we got?
Which one are you looking for?
Being competitive, just cash offers, no financing, no inspection contingency, multiple offers,
Sight unseen
offers, and dear seller letters. Oh, and just a thought, I know some of you, or maybe no one here, but I've heard of some agents doing this, and I think it's a great idea, and they've had success with it. Doing videos. Here's my buyers, here's an explanation of the offer. However, I think that's like a dear seller letter on steroids, and it's even worse. Because now, you know, a seller letter, you talk about Christmas, and religion comes into play. Or you talk about, you know, the kids playing in the backyard, and familial status comes into play. But geez, you start taking pictures and videos of the buyers, and you know, a whole bunch more comes into play. So be careful. I think that's going to only get more and more scrutinized.
Good question. I've been seeing on the Metro side, because I'm Jefferson County, so I do both, Huron and Metro. I've been seeing some listing agents putting in their private comments, no love letters. Is that something that you suggest that we should do?
I like that. I haven't done that yet, but I like it because it kind of says, hey, don't do that. Because otherwise you're going to, I mean, sellers come in all varieties. You don't want to be sitting across the table from a seller who's reading a love letter and obviously is making decisions for inappropriate reasons. And it's easy to think, well, they're the seller. They can accept whatever offer they want. Well, not according to federal law. I mean, it's hard to prove why they made a decision, but I mean, to keep yourself out of it, that's a good way to do it, just to say none of that.
I got a few, like about 3 buyers who wanted to include pictures with their love letter, and I was like, I'm not going there with fair housing. And I think they really respected it after that, but.
I explained to some folks about that, and they were like, well, we really want to put in a love letter, and I was just like, you can send it to me, I won't look at it, I won't touch it, I mean, I'll send it off, but I'm not, like, I will not give advice, I don't want you to
I wouldn't even pass it on anymore.
You know, you could also
if you could tell them if this is something you're adamant about, please deliver the letter directly to their front door or their whatever. But I literally, because of fair housing, I can't have anything to do with it. And honestly, for the flip side of this, not for someone picking for the wrong reasons. Last month we had a vet that got an accepted offer because the seller was a vet, and without the letter, he's going to be numbered offer written 19 or 20 for that season, I'm sure. Because with no money down, VA loan, who's taking that these days? So the letter did work out to actually help somebody in a protected class secure an accepted offer in this particular case. But that person was sending those letters directly to the front door themselves. If you're even passing it on, you're passing on a known possible thing, right? So I mean.
Well, if it's not, if it doesn't say it's a part of the offer, as this is addendum, you don't have to present it, right?
Correct.
So I hold it back, whatever you did, it doesn't say
Yeah,
it's
we used to
part
do
of the
that.
offer.
I've had agents say that they're not presenting the letter, they're not putting it on the MLS, no love letters. But then you submit it with a love letter attached as an addendum, and they say, well, not present it. I'm like, you have to.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
in the offer,
absolutely.
but they said, no, we're not doing anything.
Because we used to do that. Like, hey, we want you to see our love letter.
Right.
Now
It was encouraged.
no, thank you.
But
I'm wanting love letters up until the spring.
So most were.
what if in your correspondence, not including a love letter, in your correspondence with the listing agent as you submit, you tell them a little bit about the buyer in your email? Is that against it?
If they pass that on to their sellers and then the
That's the
sellers use,
intent.
and then the sellers use that information, I think you're
Still a gray area?
Even letting the listing agent know, I mean, that could skew the advice that they give to the seller. I mean, that's a slippery slope. It's probably hard not to.
But what if it's just something like, if a buyer is buying in their neighborhood they grew up in, and you tell them, hey, they grew up in this neighborhood and, you know, are really excited about this opportunity. Is that against?
That
you're not,
seems-
you're not saying they're white or they're.
You always
You're not
have.
identifying them, just like you're not identifying the house earlier, and I think it does have to do, is the person identified in any way, shape, or form in the notification of the
As
letter?
as a
person.
as a
Yeah.
protected class
Or
as,
anything.
as one of those
Yeah.
criteria, not necessarily as part of it.
But if you even identified that they were all, they happen to be all blonde and saw a lot of blonde people in that neighborhood, you know, or whatever, that's, they're already making a decision.
And the
based on
reality
that.
is, I think almost more houses than not these days, the sellers are watching these showings from their Ring camera. So, I mean, that's kind of freaky.
Oh, I had a seller tell me, hey, there's a person in my house without a mask on. I'm like, how do you know?
Yeah.
We're watching them on our camera. Where's the camera? Oh, it's behind the, you know, I'm like, wow.
Darn it, I was picking my nose at the open house. I better stop that.
Yeah, we're way past, hopefully everybody in this room, we're way past, you're always on camera.
Yeah.
Somebody else is on.
And being recorded, audio.
Audio.
But they were just sitting in their car watching the showings all day. I was,
Yeah.
wow. I got way more time.
Yeah, that's a little bit, they're just,
That's a little.
they're
You
just,
guys saw that one quickly.
It did something.
they're begging to be offended.
And the
Somebody's gonna
non-mask
say
person
something.
had the winning offer, but then
Okay.
they went back out.
Last, one more slide and that'll take us.
Actually, that says thank you, so just the rest of this slide maybe.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, so back up to that one. This is a document, this was from previous training, Dan, the successful strategies for writing competitive offers. Dan, can you bring up that document?
Sure thing.
And I don't know if this one is out there in Drive.
It is, that's where I'm hoping to find it, because that wasn't one of the ones from your email this morning, was it?
Well, I emailed you
Just a little while ago.
yeah, just at 10 o'clock.
Okay. That
Yeah.
helps.
You get a lot of emails.
No kidding. All right.
I wonder why.
What did you do?
Dang right I do. All right. Around 10. There it is.
This one. Can I play?
This one.
Yeah, so this goes through, it's not just, this may not be as updated as it could be for the very current market, but you all know all the obvious things. This goes into some of the things you can do outside of actual terms of the offer. So if you want this document, either email me or go out to Drive and Dan will put it out there and you can grab it out there.
I'll throw it in the same contracts and contingencies folder that everything else was in there.
Otherwise, does anybody have any tips that they've been using that are outside the norm that have worked well for your, when you're writing offers for the buyers to get them accepted?
I haven't personally done it, but I've seen, and maybe now that we're later in the year, it won't happen, but people paying taxes, the entire year's taxes.
Yep.
I saw that one on an offer on a listing I had.
I had some buyers that had a lot of liquidity and were willing to make strong offers, and I was like, well, do you mind giving a lower offer on your offer price, but then covering some of the closing costs and add that together? It's going to cause them less tax obligation. They're going to have more cash in their pockets. So even though you're, maybe 4,000 less than the top offer, you're giving the buyers or the sellers way more cash. Yeah,
It's the net.
the net. So yeah, I worked that a couple transactions this year.
Have you guys done the giving the seller post-closing occupancy?
Oh,
yeah.
For free.
Yeah, whatever they want. That's pretty good this year.
Up to 60 days for free.
Yeah.
I had a 40-day one.
And 60 days is the max.
60 days from a lender standpoint, because you need to have occupancy.
I mean, who knows what happens after closing?
Right.
I mean, as far as what the offer says, 60 days max.
If my neighbor got 30 grand over and 60 days after post-closing.
I had one that 16 offers on the table, everyone had escalators, they all had different languages, so I had to call final to everyone, and then I called one agent and I said, oh, you only went 60 over, can you do any more? And he's like, well, pay the taxes, and I was just joking, I was like, all right, send it over to government.
60,000 and 60,000 over?
60 over.
Wow.
And I literally, I kid you not, I was joking, because I was like, you know, like, I was just
And they
like,
sent you applied for money.
I was just gonna tell you, you know, we got an accepted offer, haven't submitted it, and he's like, we'll pay the taxes, and I'm like, send me over counter, and we'll got it. It was like insane.
Yeah.
But the one thing to also keep in mind is all those escalation clauses, some trump others in different languages. And they were, when I was sorting, I mean, literally had to print them out and know each one, and it got way too complicated of which one. So, and then I had one agent said, well, they called me and said, are you comfortable with escalation clauses? I said, yeah, bring them on. And then when I called them, I said, hey, I just need final. Like, he said, well, I thought you were comfortable with it. I'm like, yeah, but the language doesn't make sense. Like, somebody's gonna call me out and say, I should win first.
I've had a lot of sellers who are not comfortable with them. I know I'm in a different market than all of you guys are. Well, I have a lot of sellers that say, no, we don't wanna deal with those. We just, we want them to make their best offer right now.
And I've seen that, like, in the
Willing to
love
go
letters,
that
I've seen
high.
escalation.
And talk, if you're the buyer agent, talk to the listing agent. Some agents
Yeah,
say,
that's
yeah,
good.
just give us, I'm good with everything. And some, I had one say, no, I hate escalation clauses, don't give me one, just give me a solid offer, and we kept it clean. We wrote an offer like we would have wrote it 2 years ago, and he said, thank you for writing a normal offer.
Highest and best.
But with
Now, we were the only offer, so that helped, but we got in there right away, we got in there first, and
Pizza here?
Not yet.
Okay.
But
So
with
we're
my
kinda waiting
buyers, sometimes the only way to protect their, what they're buying, they're offering like crazy prices, and you're like, well, if we do this, you might end up paying only this, with an escalation clause. And I did save my clients, tens of thousands with that.
So do you guys all call the listing agent if you put an offer and you say, what's the best closing date, anything to ask for any tips? Is that okay if we're doing that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, 'cause I do that all the time.
And if you're a listing agent, putting that information in the broker helps a ton.
Yeah, well, it helps your phone, you get it up to the same questions that you.
Well, except for the people that don't.
Don't read them.
I think it helps to portray to the listing agent that your buyers are solid. They're not gonna have buyer's remorse. Anything you can do because what's a seller think? They and a listing agent, they wanna pick the offer that's gonna close. That's why, we like no contingency. But, buyers get too crazy and they get cold feet the next day. We've seen that too.
Can I thank you guys for being here too. Everybody that's given Randy at We Insure a shot for insurance stuff, or has worked with Eric and his team for guaranteed rate on an insurance or mortgage side of things right before hopefully our pizza will be here any minute. Either one of you guys have anything you want to share too? And Randy, just so everybody knows, Randy's father passed away over the weekend, and he had that yesterday. So, from that standpoint, he said, I'm gonna be here today, and it's really important for me to be here for all of us. And I think that's shows a lot of your character and everything else, so thank you for being here. But yeah, do either one of you guys have?
I just have a quick point, which may also fall in part of his category. On that post-closing occupancy, from an insurance standpoint, different carriers treat that differently. So some carriers will view that person now as a renter. Especially like 60 days is usually, in the insurance world, a carrier has 60 days to get off a policy. So if that person is not in that home by 60 days, I can guarantee you, they will null and void that policy. So anything even past that, I don't know if there's ways around 60 days or whatever, I heard 60 days was the max, but if there's ways around it to skirt it and do whatever else, be aware that the person who purchased the home has a policy that they are living in the home, and if they're not, and an insurable act happens, they might be able to decline coverage based on the fact that you actually have a rental property. You receive some sort of compensation for that person to live there. So just note that, at least let the agent, and hopefully if it's me.
I know for me, I would have never thought of that. I would only be concerned for a rate
That's a
lock.
really good point.
So make sure that the agent knows, like, hey, we have post occupancy and it's 10 days, yeah, we don't care. 60, ooh, we might be pushing, I might have to write a different policy for 60 days and then switch it over just so that they're aware.
What if you're the seller and you're the one staying for a week after closing. Can you keep your insurance
You no
policy while
longer
you're
own,
in?
you no
Right.
longer own the home, so you have no insurable interest in that home.
Okay.
You would actually have to get a renter's policy to continue covering your items.
And how many addendums are flying around right now with
Right.
none of this being considered, right?
None of it.
So-
What's a ballpark renter's policy?
So if you're selling a vacant listing, that is a specifically different policy for,
So we should, when our clients move out, or customers,
Yeah.
we should advise them of like, hey, if you move out, you're gonna sell it vacant, we should have a policy.
so if they're selling it, it depends on how long they're out. So in order for a policyholder, a home to be counted as vacant by an insurance company, usually that's 60 days or 45 days of no occupancy whatsoever. So as long as they stay under that, that's something like 30 days, I should, but there's a specific day amount that the home is, if it's empty for this long, it is not considered vacant, it doesn't have coverage. So they're gonna be out of it for, like, we left in April and we're selling it in November. Whenever they left, they should, and we get a policy for it, you can actually have a vacant home policy. You say, hey, this is what's happening, and we can get those for 6 months, 3 months, or a full year.
Yeah.
They do cost more because, well, nobody's there, and any leaky faucet now turns into a $40,000-$50,000 problem, whereas if I lived there, that leaky faucet was $1,000 because it's soft.
Yeah.
The other piece that came up earlier, when people were talking about plan and contacting people and keeping in touch with your sphere, please remember that if you have the proper agent, and it's part of what Dan and I were originally trying to do with this, is most people who are my client for insurance, I'll end up talking to them 3 to 4 times a year. And I'm also reaching out, I have lead lists, some of them are yours. We had an instance where I reached out to call somebody, it was a prior Remax transaction from 4 years ago. When I reached out to contact them about seeing if we could do their insurance, he and his wife were in talks about selling their home.
They were not gonna reuse our name necessarily either.
And so I was like, oh, well, that's awesome. Hung up the phone, like, okay, well, let me know what you guys plan to do. The thought was they were going to sell their home, rent, because they were gonna build. Hey, you know what, when you make that decision, do me a favor, give me a shot so I can do your renter's insurance, and then we'll talk about the new home. Hung up the phone, and immediately called that agent and said, hey, I don't know what your contact one with this person is, but this was one of your transactions, and they're thinking about doing X, Y, and Z. Good luck. Like, I don't have any more for you, that's one of your people. I'm just letting you know that this is what I heard. And so my job is, when I have your clients, is when I hear stuff, whatever it might be, like they just had another kid, well, maybe they're maxed out on bedrooms. I don't know that. But when I hear those things, my first job is to let you know, Tim and Sue just had a baby. Maybe you want to send them a preview, I don't know, whatever it is, but also, I can only sell them a 3-bedroom. That's kid 3, kid 4, whatever it is. Maybe it's time to reach out to them. So that's part of what I'm doing is when I hear stuff, is relaying it back to you in a way that might, I don't know if it's going to cause them to make a move or do something, but here's some info for you.
As a closing plug for him too, he's helping me with my own personal health insurance and life insurance and stuff too, just as an agent. So if you guys need help with any of that kind of stuff, he's got it across the board. Eric, do you have anything as far as a market update, mortgage side? Pizza's here, so we can start grabbing food, and then everybody just, if you want to grab some food and you gotta head out, we'll see you later. Thanks for coming. After you're done with your statement, Tim, if you have a closing statement, let's see.
I just say thanks for everybody coming today.
Yeah, it's great to see everybody in person.
your lovely faces in person. Next big event is October 7th here for our annual meeting, but it's more of a party. So we're looking forward to it. You all.
Well, lots of training between now and then, for both Mark's marketing stuff and continued stuff with him, but that's our next big company-wide meeting, will be October 7th. Eric?
I mean, from a market standpoint, actually from the closing occupancy, FHFA, which is the oversight for both Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, that 60-day rule is one of their rules in there. Technically, it says after the 61st day, they can, if you're not occupying, they can start foreclosure proceedings, which is not always a great thing. So make sure, obviously, that you do that stuff. but the truth of it is, they leave it on the lender to go verify if somebody's in there, and none of us are doing it. Because we got other things.
I was gonna say,
right?
how would they know?
So you're the occupancy police and you guys don't have patrol cars right now?
Yeah, exactly. I've had, in 10 years of doing this, I've had one person, which clearly was a messing problem.
Although but on the insurance side, they'll investigate much more.
That's-
They'll,
If
they're gonna try to deny a
something
claim.
happens, they'd be like, why are you living here? Because
Right.
it should be Tim and Sue, whatever, you're Bob and Larry. Why- why-
Anything else that you have to get?
Well, with that one too, however, VA does actually have a bit in there where you can go up to 120 days under certain circumstances, so that's a little bit of a.
You can do anything on a deal, I know, right? Just sell your home and just buy another home whenever you feel like it, or vice versa.
As far as the market goes on the whole, I mean, we've definitely seen it slow down, number of applications nationally is definitely down. People signing leases and getting back in. We can see it on just in our team where we've had to slow down with applicants quite a bit. Inventory wise, Mortgage Bank Association came out and said that we're expecting the same or similar to this year for the next 4 to 5 years. And we're expecting 2.7 million more first-time home buyers nationally. So we're at about 2% of the population nationally out looking for a house. So this year's competitive. I think next year's going to be probably to keep competition based on what they're saying.
There you go.
That was nice, everybody, we can still keep talking.
Tim, anything for closing?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Hey, if you're watching this later this month or whatever, if you have any questions, certainly just put them in the comments. We'll see them, or shoot Tim an email directly, or email someone else. No matter what, get a clue. Love you.
Good to see you. Life is good?
When you get signed up, you're gonna get some questions. That might have a good idea when we were talking about the multiple offers and escalation clause. I actually had one where we had the right to bump this buyer up probably another